When I open up my photographs to begin the tracing process, the first thing I want to do is look at the photograph and figure out what it is I'm going to trace. Let's say that I want to use this signpost, and I also want to use this stoplight. I'm going to take a look at this and say, well, this is further back in space than the stop sign. So I would not trace these on the same layer because when they move in the animation, they would be moving at different speeds. So if I want to use both of those, I would trace the signpost on one layer and the stop light on another layer. So I'm going to start with the signpost. First thing I'll do is go to my layers palette and go down to create new layer down at the bottom here next to the trash can, or from the drop down I can do new layer or shift command N. And then I'm going to say OK. So now I have a new layer that I can begin to draw my lines on. If I want to be able to distinguish the lines of my tracing from the photograph, I can dim down the photo a little by double clicking on it and going to opacity and reducing the opacity. I want to be sure then to lock that photo because I don't want to actually draw on the photo, and go up to my new layer. And then I'm going to choose a brush and choose a brush size. I'll put the hardness at 100% so that I don't get that soft spray can effect. And if you're doing curves, you'll use the graphics tablets to draw the curves. If you are working with straight lines, you can draw them on the graphics tablet, but there is also a way in Photoshop to connect the dots. So if I click in the location where I want to start the line and then I go to where I want to place it, hold down Shift, now when I click it will connect those two dots. So I'm just going to do a series of connect the dots to start creating my outline. Now, there are no curved lines in this silhouette, but let's say there was suddenly going to be a curve. I would release the Shift button and I would draw the curve, and then I could go back to doing a click. So if I needed to draw the curve, I would simply use the graphics tablet to go ahead and draw that. Now, as I'm drawing, I want to be careful not to leave any gaps or spaces in between, because we're going to want to come back and fill this in with a solid color. I have a tracing that I did earlier here as a sample. So let's say this is my silhouette. What I'm going to want to be able to do is use the Magic Wand tool and select the interior of this object and then go to Edit, Fill. Or I could do it the same way we did earlier, which is create a giant brush and bring the black color forward. And I need to change something in my selection process. So I'm going to do a deselect or Command D. And when I use the magic wand, up here at the top, there's an option for contiguous and not contiguous. When it's set to not contiguous, it's selecting everything inside the black lines and everything outside. In other words, it's selecting everything that is similar to what I'm clicking on, in this case, white. If I select contiguous, it will only select the whites, or the things that are similar, within boundaries. So if I've successfully made a continuous black line here, then it won't break out of the boundary. And in that case, I can then either take my giant paintbrush or go to Edit, Fill, and fill it with black. Then I'm going to deselect or Command D. And I think this happened because I had a little bit of gray, so I'm going to go back in and select that white line. And just fill that in. Now, let me go back a couple of steps. if this line had a break in it, so let me just take my eraser, make it really small, and let's just say somewhere along, sometimes we don't even see the break. But if there was one, then potentially the selection could break outside of the object. In this case, there's a little bit of gray there that is separating it out. If my tolerance were higher, so this is my selection, the higher the tolerance, the more it will select things that are that color and similar to that color. So in some cases, this is going to break outside, select the background in addition to the signpost, and in that case, when you do your fill, it'll fill the whole thing. So it's important to, if that happens, to zoom in on your drawing and possibly come back with a small line and patch those areas. So you think of it a little bit like the walls of a dam, and you're trying to make a selection within the walls. If there's a break in the wall, it's going to flow into the outside of that. So let me just go back to selecting this. Let me give it a really high tolerance threshold, really big brush, fill. Now if I got that little bit of white, I'm going to zoom in and go back in and click it again. Now I have my signpost. Let's say I wanted to combine two similar elements, like this signpost with another kind of traffic-related piece. I'm then going to need to take these two silhouettes and bring them together into one Photoshop file. And I'll go over that in the next video.